On a quiet street, in a town where neighbors trusted each other and doors were rarely locked, one night changed everything. A discovery so shocking, it tore through the community like a storm no one saw coming. Behind the calm surface of everyday life, something darker was waiting to be uncovered. The question is, how did an ordinary evening end in one of the most unbelievable murders in American history? The year was 1995. The setting, a modest town in Ohio, known more for its quiet streets and friendly gatherings than for crime. Families here shared backyards, waved at one another on their morning walks, and rarely feared what might come after dark. The victim was a 27-year-old woman named Anna Whitfield. By all accounts, she lived a simple, ordinary life. She worked at the local library, adored by children who listened to her weekly story hour, and known to friends as the kind of person who never missed a birthday card or a late-night phone call. But on one November evening, Anna never returned home. What began as a missing persons report would soon unravel into one of the most shocking and disturbing murder cases this town, and the entire nation, had ever seen. This case is remembered not just because of the brutality of the crime, but because of how completely it defied the expectations of a place believed to be untouched by violence. It is a story that continues to haunt those who lived through it, and to puzzle investigators who thought they had seen everything. To understand the crime, you must first understand the woman whose life was stolen. Anna Whitfield was 27 years old. Raised in this very town, she was the youngest of 3 siblings, the one her parents described as the heart of the family. She was known for her quiet strength, a warmth that seemed to follow her wherever she went. Each morning, Anna walked the same path down Main Street to the local library, where she worked as a children's librarian. The building itself was modest, but to Anna it was more than a job, it was her calling. Parents remembered how she would crouch down to speak to children at eye level, as if their voices were the most important in the room. Her closest friends spoke of her passion for writing. In the evenings, long after the library had closed, Anna could be found scribbling in notebooks, filling page after page with stories she hoped one day to publish. A dreamer, yes, but one rooted firmly in the small-town life she cherished. Family gatherings were sacred. She never missed Sunday dinner at her parents' home, never failed to check in on her aging grandmother, and never let a holiday pass without laughter and photographs. To those who knew her best, Anna represented safety, kindness, and the sort of goodness people believed could never be touched by tragedy. The backdrop of her world seemed to reflect that same sense of calm. This was a place of autumn leaves covering quiet sidewalks, church bells echoing on Sunday mornings, and neighbors who waved as they passed by. To the outside eye, it was the perfect picture of small-town America. But in the shadows of that familiar setting, something else was taking shape, something no one could have predicted. And for Anna, the life she had so carefully built was about to be torn apart in ways that would leave a permanent scar on the community she loved. It was November 14, 1995. A Monday. The kind of evening when most of the town had already settled in, the streets lit only by porch lights and the occasional passing car. Anna finished her shift at the library just after 8 p.m. She locked the doors, tucked her notebooks into her bag, and waved goodbye to a colleague who remembered her saying she was looking forward to a quiet night at home. That was the last time anyone would see Anna alive. By 10 p.m., her apartment lights remained off. Calls from friends went unanswered, unusual for someone known to pick up on the first ring. At 11:30, a neighbor heard what sounded like a door slamming, followed by silence. The next morning, Anna did not show up for work. Concern quickly turned to panic. A close friend, alarmed by the unanswered phone calls, stopped by her apartment. What they found was chilling. The front door was unlocked. Inside, Anna's belongings were untouched, her bag neatly placed on the kitchen counter, her coat draped over a chair. But Anna herself was nowhere to be found. Police were called, and within hours, the small town that prided itself on safety found itself the center of a crime scene. Officers searched her home, the surrounding streets, and eventually the nearby woods. And then came the discovery that would change everything. Hidden in a shallow ravine just a mile from her apartment lay Anna's body. The scene was brutal, the details so disturbing that investigators themselves were shaken. What had happened in the hours between Anna's last goodbye at the library and the moment she was found would become the heart of an investigation that stretched far beyond the borders of this quiet Ohio town. And as detectives began piecing together her final moments, they realized this was no ordinary crime. This was something far more disturbing, a puzzle that would lead them down paths they never expected. From the very first moments at the ravine, detectives knew this case would not be simple. The brutality of the scene raised immediate questions. This wasn't random. Whoever had taken Anna's life had done so with purpose, but why? The investigation began with the people closest to her. Detectives spoke first with friends and family, reconstructing Anna's final day hour by hour. Her colleagues at the library described her as cheerful, making weekend plans. Her parents said she had promised to visit the following evening. By all accounts, nothing seemed unusual. But the first cracks in the calm appeared when detectives spoke to her neighbor. He claimed he had seen a figure near Anna's apartment late that night, a man standing in the shadows. When pressed, he could not give a clear description, only that the figure moved quickly, as if avoiding being seen. Attention turned to Anna's personal life. Though she was private, police uncovered that she had recently ended a brief relationship with a man named Michael Turner, a 32-year-old mechanic who lived nearby. Friends recalled she had grown uneasy around him in the weeks before her death. Turner insisted their split had been amicable, but investigators were not convinced. Meanwhile, forensic teams combed through the crime scene. They found strands of hair, a partial shoe print in the mud, and fibers that did not match anything in Anna's apartment. Each clue suggested someone had been close to her that night. The community was shaken. Candlelight vigils appeared on the courthouse steps. Newspapers splashed Anna's face across their front pages with headlines demanding justice. For a town unaccustomed to violence, fear set in. Families who once left their doors unlocked now bolted them shut. And then came the first break. Traces of Anna's blood were discovered inside a car parked just blocks from her home. The vehicle belonged to someone no one had expected, and it sent the investigation spiraling in an entirely new direction. The discovery of Anna's blood in a car so close to her home seemed, at first, to give investigators their prime suspect. The vehicle belonged to Michael Turner, her former boyfriend. Detectives brought him in for questioning, hoping this would be the breakthrough they desperately needed. But Turner had an alibi. He claimed he was at a late-night poker game with coworkers on the night Anna disappeared. One by one, his colleagues backed his story, swearing he never left the table. And when the evidence was re-examined, doubts surfaced. The blood in his car was there, yes, but it was only a faint trace, too little, some argued, to prove a struggle had ever taken place. The case stalled. Just as investigators felt the trail slipping away, another name surfaced, Daniel Mercer, a quiet man who lived on the outskirts of town. He was in his mid-30s, kept to himself, and had no clear connection to Anna. But neighbors reported seeing his pickup truck near the library on the night of her disappearance. When police searched Mercer's property, they uncovered something disturbing. In a shed behind his home were notebooks filled with obsessive writings about women in the town, and among the pages, Anna's name appeared more than once. It seemed like a perfect fit. But once again, the case refused to cooperate. Mercer denied everything, claiming he was being targeted because of his eccentric behavior. There was no physical evidence tying him to the scene. The town grew restless. Rumors spread. Was the killer a stranger passing through? Or was it someone hiding in plain sight, blending into the daily routines of the community? Detectives pushed forward, combing through hundreds of tips, interviewing anyone who might have crossed Anna's path. Each time they thought they were close, another lead collapsed. And then, just as the case threatened to go cold, a single piece of evidence emerged, a discovery so shocking that it would not only reopen the investigation but change the direction entirely. What investigators uncovered next would leave even the most seasoned officers stunned. For weeks, the case seemed ready to collapse under its own weight. Leads faded, suspects slipped through the cracks, and fear hung heavy over the town. But one overlooked detail, buried deep in the forensic reports, would change everything. Investigators revisited the fibers collected near Anna's body. At first, they were dismissed as ordinary clothing threads. But under closer examination, experts determined they came from an expensive wool coat, a coat not commonly found in this small Ohio town. Detectives traced the fibers to a man named Richard Harlan, a respected local businessman in his early 40s. On the surface, Harlan was the last person anyone would have suspected, a devoted husband, a father of two, and active in the community. But when pressed, his story began to unravel. Phone records placed him near Anna's apartment on the night she vanished. Surveillance footage from a gas station showed his car driving toward the wooded area where Anna's body was later found, at nearly the exact time investigators believe she was killed. The breakthrough came when forensic teams searched Harlan's home. Hidden in a locked trunk in his garage, they discovered items belonging to Anna, her notebook, a scarf she was last seen wearing, and a pair of earrings her mother had given her just weeks before her death. The evidence was undeniable. Richard Harlan, a man outwardly admired in the community, had been leading a double life. Behind closed doors, he harbored obsessions no one could have imagined. When confronted with the findings, Harlan broke. In a chilling confession, he admitted to luring Anna under the pretense of offering her a ride home that night. What followed was an act of violence so calculated, it stunned even the most experienced investigators. The revelation sent shockwaves through the town. The idea that a man so deeply woven into the fabric of their community could commit such an act left neighbors questioning everything they thought they knew. Trust, once the town's foundation, had been shattered. But as the confession was read aloud in court, and as Anna's family listened in silence, one question remained: why? What could have driven a man with so much to lose to take the life of a young woman who had done nothing but live with kindness? The answer, if there was one, would never bring Anna back. But for the first time, her family and the town had a name, a face, and the truth behind the most shocking murder they had ever known. The trial of Richard Harlan began less than a year after Anna's murder. The courtroom was filled each day, not just with reporters and attorneys, but with neighbors who had once called Harlan a friend. People who had shared meals with him, worked alongside him, now sat in silence as the evidence was laid bare. Prosecutors presented the fibers, the belongings found in his garage, and the chilling details of his confession. Piece by piece, the story unfolded before the jury, a story that stripped away the mask of respectability Harlan had worn for years. Anna's family sat in the front row every day, enduring each photograph, each detail of what had been done to their daughter. Her mother would later say it was like reliving the night of the murder, over and over again. The defense attempted to argue that Harlan's confession had been coerced, that the evidence was circumstantial. But the weight of the proof was too much to overcome. After only 8 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty of murder in the first degree. The sentence was swift: life in prison without the possibility of parole. For many in the courtroom, the words brought relief. Yet for Anna's loved ones, justice could never erase the void her absence left behind. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered. Some wept, some whispered disbelief, others shook their heads in silence. The image of Richard Harlan, once a respected figure, being led away in chains, was almost too much to comprehend. The town, once defined by its calm and safety, was forever changed. Doors stayed locked. Neighbors looked at one another with suspicion. The question lingered in every conversation: if Richard Harlan was capable of this, who else might be hiding behind a mask of normalcy? For Anna's family, the verdict marked the end of one chapter, but it was no ending at all. The hole left by her absence was one no sentence could ever fill. In the years since the verdict, Anna Whitfield's story has never faded from memory. For her family, every birthday, every holiday, carries a quiet absence, a reminder of the daughter, the sister, the friend who should have been there. For the community, the case became a turning point. A town once defined by its innocence was forced to confront a darker reality, that danger does not always come from strangers, but sometimes from those we think we know best. Anna's murder is remembered not only for its brutality, but for the betrayal it revealed. A trusted figure, admired in public, hiding secrets so deep they cost an innocent young woman her life. And though Richard Harlan spends his days behind prison walls, questions remain. How long had he lived this double life? Were there signs others missed? And what drives someone with everything to lose to commit an act so unthinkable? There are no answers that can bring Anna back. But her story stands as a chilling reminder that behind even the calmest streets and the friendliest smiles, there can be truths too terrible to imagine. The town has moved forward. New families have arrived, businesses have opened, children play in the streets again. Yet, for those who remember, the echo of Anna's final night still lingers, a scar that time alone cannot heal. And so, this case remains one of the most shocking murders in American history. Not for its mystery, not for its twists, but for the way it shattered the illusion that safety was guaranteed. Anna Whitfield's story is one that continues to echo, a reminder of how fragile trust can be, and how quickly a quiet life can be stolen. If you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, make sure you subscribe, so you never miss the next case we uncover. And tell us in the comments, do you believe justice was truly served, or do questions still remain unanswered? Join us next time, as we bring you another case that challenges what you think you know about crime, truth, and justice.